Hi, everybody, and welcome to week two in our weekly webinar series. Today, as you can see, we're discussing the topic of motivation in winter. And now that we're currently towards the end of January, it's a great time to discuss this as spring and summer are upon us. But if we look at motivation and where does motivation lie? Well, many people would attach motivation to the idea of building habits in their life. And this is a simple framework for building habits. So as you can see there, trigger, behavior, reward. To give you an example, let's look at coffee. So when we feel tired, that might be the trigger. We reach for the coffee. The reward is we feel alert. Now, the only issue when it comes to habits like these is that the reward can be quite short lived. So we might have the coffee, feel energetic for an hour or two, but then hit another slump, and the cycle may continue. And if you look at your own setup in terms of your daily habits, which ones are less conscious or even unconscious to you, where they're now part of your daily algorithm, if you like? Because often people find it hard to make changes to certain behaviors. And the truth is because we will naturally go towards what's easier for us rather than what's beneficial for us. And let me give you a bit more detail on that. So, if we like to go to bed at 11 o'clock, we like to stay up, watch a bit of Netflix, we get up in the morning time, we hit snooze, we stay in bed for an extra couple of minutes, and that's part of our routine. Well, then, if I say to you, okay, we're going to try and do something different in terms of giving you more energy, I now want you to go to bed earlier at night. I want you to cut out an hour of that Netflix. Also, I want you to get up a half an hour earlier because I want you to do some exercise because this is going to be what's going to help you create more energy for yourself. So all of a sudden you're thinking, okay, I've got to go to bed earlier. I've got to get up earlier. I've got to start exercising. I've got to cut out a little bit of Netflix. Oh, you know what? The coffee seems like the better option to have more energy during the day. Now, the issue is that if we opt for the coffee 4, 5, 6 times a day, well, it's going to have consequences. We're going to be dehydrated. There's going to be a lot of adrenaline floating around our system that we're not using. So, we want to today explore when it comes to motivation and when it comes to habit formation, how do we effectively build smarter strategies to create better, more beneficial habits in our life? And it often comes back to this a lot. How many days to create a habit? We go from 21 days, 90 days. There's even obviously the 100 days of walking at the moment. So people gravitate towards maybe thinking that it's roughly between about that time frame, 30 to 100 days. The truth is that it's different for everybody. And we have to accept that. If you're somebody who's enjoyed a cigarette with your coffee for the last 30 years of your life, it's going to take you a little bit of time to move away from that habit. So today, what I want to discuss with you is not so much how many days does it take to create a new habit. And it's the idea that, okay, well, if I'm motivated because I know it's 21 days, well, what happens after that 21 days? What happens after I finish the 21 days of eating well or exercising? Does my motivation stay elevated? Does it crash? So we want to look at it from a different perspective, and we want to look at it from the point of view of actually, how do I create a foundation for motivation when it comes to my wellness? Now, again, touching back on what is wellness, it's this idea that wellness enables us to deal with the challenges and the stressors that come our way. And I like what you see there. Life is a daily transaction between us and our environmental demands. Those environmental demands might come from family life, from work life, and even just some of the things that are going on internally with you. The conflict, maybe it's negative self talk in an area of your life at the moment. And last week we looked at the performance pyramid. We looked at the different areas. Now, one of the areas where we fall down in January is that we put a lot of emphasis on our physical well being. We put emphasis on exercising more than we have before. We put emphasis on cutting down calories because we think that's the smart approach with our nutrition. But often it actually impacts our motivation in terms of it decreases our motivation because as I make all these changes in the physical wellness space, it actually has an impact on me being able to deal with stuff in the other areas of my life. And what stuff do I mean? Well, let's talk about things like work. If I'm on less calories and exercising more, initially, if that deficit is too much, it's going to impact my ability to focus as I move throughout my day. If I'm low in terms of mental energy and physical energy, well, then all of a sudden, my emotional stability is impacted. I start to think that the smallest issue is the biggest problem. So it's important to, again, just touch back in and consider these four areas when it comes to motivation. And none are more prominent for us than the one at the top, sense of purpose. And that's really what underpins motivation for me. And it's the idea that it's not so much about time management as it is about priority management. And if you're very clear on your sense of purpose, and wellness is part of that, wellness is a priority in your life, well, then you will find yourself putting your wellness activities in that high in terms of priority and high in terms of on your time schedule. You're putting it in that top left, that do it category. But if you don't really understand why you're exercising more, why you've made a change to your nutrition, why you're going to bed that little bit earlier, if it's only for those superficial benefits that we're told about, like weight loss, etc., we're probably not going to stick to that activity for long. We're probably not going to have a lot of fuel in that motivation tank. So I'm urging everybody to try and find meaning, try and actually assess that sense of purpose for you in terms of wellness. Like, what does wellness give you in your life? What does your exercise session, your walk at lunchtime, what do they give you in your life? What about the 10 minutes where you just completely zone out from everything and you give yourself 10 minutes with no distraction? What does that give you in your life? Because Viktor Frankl, who was an Austrian psychiatrist and actually spent 2 years and 10 months in the concentration camps. Now, he had a school of thought around psychology, and he believed that the key to life was finding meaning. So, no matter what challenges came your way, you were searching for meaning in that challenge, like what we face at the moment with COVID-19. When it comes to actually really thinking about what wellness means to me in my life, I want you to adopt Viktor Frankl's approach, because what Viktor Frankl said was that we need to strive for value based goals, goals that really align with who we are. And if you can attach your wellness to who you really are, like if you're somebody who is big on spending time with family, and then all of a sudden that alarm clock goes off at 6 a.m. and you're wondering, should I or shouldn't I get up for that walk? Well, if the reason that's getting you out of bed is I want to lose a couple of pounds, again, it's not going to be strong. You're probably going to find yourself pulling the covers back over yourself and staying in that nice warm bed. But if your reason for getting up to exercise is, I know when I start my day with 20 minutes of exercise, I'm more engaged on those with those around me, those who I love. I'm able to better focus on my work as I move through the day. I find I get more done. I find I'm happier within myself, which impacts those around me. If they're your reasons, if that's the meaning you've found for exercise, you're far more likely to get yourself out of the covers and get yourself exercising. And that applies for everything that falls into that wellness space for you. So search for those value based goals. And when you've found those value based goals, remember it's layering upon small little actions. It's not completely changing your routine. So it's coming back to that theory of marginal gains. And remember, energy is something that we create, it's not something that we have. So it's a process that we're actively contributing to as we move throughout each day. We're never going to progress if we constantly are judging ourselves or feeling guilty for what we're not doing. It's about focusing on what you are doing, and those little hits of motivation, that sense of accomplishment, will continue to build, and it will continue to help you sustain some of these changes that you've made. And when it comes to making those changes, look at the areas that we have here. So you've got some areas that would be potentially positive or be perceived to be positive, like activity or daily eating. But I also want you to explore things like stress for you, because It's not just about creating new habits to stay motivated. It's also about exploring old habits. It's about exploring old habits and understanding that there is a need that sits beneath that action, even in a bad habit. So, for example, brief example as we finish up, and this is key to motivation. If you have a bad habit like opening up a bottle of wine each evening, I want you to understand that there is a need that sits beneath that behavior. It could be that you want to disconnect after a long day. But ultimately, the consequences of doing that every day are going to bear fruit over time. And you'll find yourself in your doctor's surgery and the doctor telling you that you need to make all these changes. So the need to disconnect is valid. So I don't want you to judge the fact that at the end of the day, you're opening up a bottle of wine. I don't want you to feel guilty. But what I do want you to do is I want you to ask yourself honestly, are there other ways in which I could fulfill this need to disconnect? It could be through physical activity. It could be through maybe doing a bit of meditation. It's the idea that the needs are valid, but the habits or the actions need to be explored because it's very easy to fall into a structure and a routine of bad habits. Because as we've mentioned there, energy is something we create, but also, energy is something that we spend. And sometimes it's as easy for us to spend energy over the course of our day as it is to create energy over the course of our day. So, as we finish up, guys, I just want you to consider as you move through your week to motivate yourself. Search for that meaning, as Viktor Frankl said. Try and find purpose in the activities. What is the real reason behind it? As Viktor Frankl himself said, if we can understand the why, we can deal with any how. And the other piece is when you do understand that and you've got that clarity, remember, layer on those healthy actions, those new habits. Don't try and change everything overnight. But a little tip I would give you is to get you started. Try and pick maybe 3 or 4 things that you can do throughout the day, no more than 10 minutes. And at the end of every day, I want you to look back and say, if I completed all 4 today, how did I feel? Did they help me? What was the difference in my day? And on days when you actually don't get any of them done, assess those days also. Don't feel guilty and say, why didn't I do X, Y, and Z? Ask yourself, what was the impact of not doing X, Y, and Z? And as always, guys, if you want more information on this, please feel free to scan the QR code there. That will lead you to my LinkedIn page where I post other bits of information on this subject. And best of luck, and I hope this information helps you this week. Thank you.